Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Play, Pause, Rewind. We are kicking off 2023. Happy New Year, everyone.
Woo!
This is our 51st episode of this show. So welcome if you're new. Welcome back if you're not new. Niles, how was your New Year and your Christmas holiday? How have you been it's almost been a month, I feel like, since we did
I
one
know
of
time's just breezing by when you got no responsibilities,
these.
I'm one of those fortunate few that has, some time off, some breathing room during the holidays. And so
Yep.
I've been enjoying it like as much as I can, just sitting around doing nothing that's really too challenging and just chilling out, having a good time,
It's
watching some
acceptable.
stuff,
Yeah.
playing some games. It's been good, and it was always nice to see my family. I always love the holidays, and just the magic of Christmas is it's wonderful. But it was a good
Yeah.
time. How about you, Dylan? How have you been since our last episode, which was our holiday special episode,
Yes,
our
it
special
was our
50th
favorite
one?
holiday movies. Pretty good. I drove home to Texas, which is always brutal, but got to do it with a dog. So did that. Fortunately, had good weather. Saw my
Nice.
family, saw some Austin friends, met some friends in person for the first time, which was really nice. And yeah,
Hmm.
just really, really good time. Relaxing with the family and friends and everything like that. New Year's
Mhm.
Eve back here in Denver was a pretty good time and saw several movies. So it's always good. It's always
Nice.
good to
Yeah.
see
Yes.
movies. Yeah.
Same here. Yeah, we saw some new ones. We saw some old ones, and one of the ones I saw was the one we're talking about today, as
Yes.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. Yeah, I did my homework, so I'm glad I
That's
watched it.
yeah, that's good. That would make this episode kind of tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as Niles alluded to, we are talking about a movie, of course. We're gonna do
Mhm.
non-spoilers for a couple minutes and then spoilers. And this movie is a murder mystery. So if you haven't seen it, don't watch the spoiler part because
Yes.
that would be kind of sad. We're talking about Glass Onion, the sequel to Knives Out from 2019, I think.
I think you're
Uh,
right. Yeah.
um, and yeah, it's a standalone sequel, so it's like you really could watch them in either order. But we follow Detective Benoit Blanc as he arrives on a billionaire's private island in Greece alongside some of that billionaire Miles Braun's friends for a murder mystery party. Miles Braun is going to be killed,
Mhm.
and they have to figure out who did it. But things take a dark turn when maybe an actual murder happens on the island, and
Oh.
Benoit Blanc has to solve the case while the murderer is afoot. Um, this is once
Mhm.
again written and directed by Rian Johnson, who did the first one, The Last Jedi, Looper, some Breaking Bad episodes, and more stuff. Who I think is a really good writer and a really good director. Some people would disagree, but you know, um,
Everyone's got an opinion. Yeah, I appreciate Ryan Johnson for sure, and I know some people don't appreciate what he did with Star Wars, but you just look at Knives Out, you look at Glass Onion, you look at these other movies he's done, and it's like, man, I do appreciate the way he directs and the way he
mhm.
writes. I think it's very strong and it's
he's so
quick.
his writing is so thoughtful, and like
Yes.
when you hear him talk about the decisions he makes, there's like so much care and just like I don't know. He does things for a reason. Like you can
Yeah.
you can be pissed about the direction he took Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi, but like he really thought about why he did that and made some bold moves, but with reasoning behind them, and I
Yeah.
respect that.
Yeah.
But
Ryan Johnson's a nerd
he
for
is a
sure.
nerd. He's a big nerd, which I love.
But yeah, yeah, nerd in a good way because yeah, he's really thoughtful and intentional, just like what you were talking
hmm
about. Yeah.
Yeah, and this movie stars Daniel Craig once again, but the rest of the cast is entirely new, and we get Edward Norton, Janelle Monáe, Dave Bautista, Catherine Hahn, Leslie Odom Jr., Kate Hudson, Jessica Henwick, and Madeline Klein. Um, totally distinct cast from the previous movie, and totally different feel. So, what were some of your initial thoughts about Glass Onion?
I really enjoyed it. It feels like a good, everyone's always saying it about these kinds of films like Knives Out and Glass Onion. People are
Mhm.
talking about, it's obviously a whodunit film,
Yes.
classic kind of murder mystery story, but I think this film is kind of a lot more than that. It's not just like, oh, who did it out of this cast of characters. It's actually, like we were just saying, it's thoughtful. it's meticulous, and it kind of merges some other genres in there too, like a
Mhm.
little bit more thriller. You see that in there. You see some comedic
Yeah.
elements in there too. So I think it's like it's a good mixture of thing. But I think it's just phenomenal. It feels
Mhm.
just as strong as the original Knives Out mystery, and in my opinion, I don't think it's as good or like
Mhm.
better. I think the
Okay.
original Knives Out is still like it's just got that really strong DNA, and it's difficult for me to describe why I think it's a lot better. But
Mhm.
this one is still like it can stand out on its own. And I agree. You can either watch this one first, you can watch the last one first. It really doesn't matter. You're gonna get a great murder mystery story
Mhm.
either way.
Yeah, and I think this is phenomenal as well. I put it pretty much on par with Knives Out, but
Yeah.
it feels very different. And there's some similar DNA within the two of them that we'll get into in spoilers. That's more to do with the structure and the idea that it's a whodunit with a little bit of a twist and there's more going on.
Hmm.
But similar to the first one, there's a decent amount of commentary thrown in there. Lots of colorful characters who all have different perspectives. And I mean, the first one was a big extended family, right? And our point of view
Yes.
character is actually not Benoit Blanc in the first movie. It's Marta Cabrera, played by Anna Darmus. Blanc is more front and center in this one than he is in Knives Out, which was interesting, I think, because and I don't want to say too much more on that without spoilers, but it's like it would have been very easy for Johnson to just repeat the formula of Knives Out again. Like we have
Hmm.
a character we follow who is not Blanc, who is interacting with Blanc in certain ways, and he didn't do that. He kind of does, but not really. Blanc is the point of view character for at least a decent chunk of this film, which sets it apart from the first one. It's a different take, so
Yeah.
that's fun.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we can get more into that later.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like any good kind of murder mystery or whodunit film, there's a lot of twists and turns.
Mm-hmm.
There's some good stuff, there's good development. As it's one of those films where you do need to pay attention to like every single scene, or else
Yeah.
you're gonna miss something. And then, it's gonna be integral to the plot moving forward. Um, but it felt a lot like an Agatha Christie kind of story,
Right.
kind of one of those classic novels. Um, but just because there was so much going on and it was going so quick, I think there's at least like one point like in the second act where just like it was just a little too quick for me.
Okay.
And like the it was like you guys can slow down a little bit. You can take your
Okay.
time, breathe, like some of the like when they were talking about the motivations and opportunities and all that, it
Mm.
kind of just got a little like confusing for me really
Okay.
quick.
Yeah.
But that's just like one small complaint because all in all, yeah, this is such a phenomenal film, and especially the performances. I think some of these characters are just so unique and well
Mhm.
rounded as well. Like especially Blanc and our other female protagonist, Brand.
Mhm.
Um, they're just so great.
Yeah, they are, and all the characters have like, which is just good character writing. Like they have more depth than you initially are exposed to, and the more time
Hmm.
we spend with them, the more we figure out about what their motivations are, why they're doing what they are, and it for the most part, it doesn't fall into the trap of like any of them are like all good or all bad. They're just complicated people who are self-interested and behave in certain ways because of that. Even though a
Hmm.
lot of them are a little bit shallow and not that great. But
Yeah.
yes, the performances and the character writing were great at across the board, and the costumes were wonderful also.
Yes, I really liked how everyone was dressed. Like Blanc's outfits were just like so cute.
Mm-hmm.
Like his little swimsuit, like
His
the
swimsuit, there
stripes.
was like a whole outfit thing.
It was so funny. I loved it. I'm like, yes, please give me more of that. The outfits were really funny, but everyone looked great. And yeah, like these characters, they're obviously the heart of the movie. You can't
Mm-hmm.
have a movie without characters, obviously. But like when it comes to a murder mystery, this kind of Clue-like environment, you need some really strong characters, and I think everyone really did come through on these. And like I appreciated this is kind of one of the reasons why I like Ryan Johnson's writing too, is he's like very on the nose
Mm-hmm.
about some things, like he's not I mean, he does have some subtext and some underlying messaging going on in his movies and stuff like that. But, these characters, they kind of felt like they were just like gently mocking
Mm-hmm.
these archetypes from real life. Like you got the idiot tech billionaires, you got there's like these influencers, like the Dave Bautista's characters, like this
Mm-hmm.
right wing
Yeah, he's like a
influencer.
manosphere guy.
Yeah, Manosphere guy. That's a better way to put it. And like spineless politicians, and you got these impulsive celebrities, like, like I think some of these people, like you're saying, they are complex, but they are just kind of like, kind of mocking these things that we have to endure on a daily basis these days, these disruptors.
Yeah, and I mean, Ryan Johnson really hits the nail on the head with like who someone is if they call themselves a disruptor. Like, no, you're just a clown who is like trying to stand out. And like everybody who pays attention to this world knows, if you're in the Silicon Valley space or something like that, and you're just like, we're gonna break the system, we're gonna disrupt things. It's like that's how you get billions of dollars in VC funding, because VC people are like, ooh, disruption, very interesting. I'm interested. It's like, what are you disrupting? It's like, we are bringing the next disruption to the world of refrigerators. It's like, what does it do? It's like, we're disrupting the space. It's like, can you elaborate? We're disrupting.
we can't talk about it. We got to disrupt.
You just have to wait and see. Your mind will be blown.
Yeah, but in reality, they're just assholes.
Yeah, it's just like a refrigerator with a screen or something.
Yeah. Oh my God, the Internet of Things. Wow, it's crazy.
It's like, it has a hookup for your iPad.
Now you can dock your phone into your fridge, and something happens. We'll figure it out later in development, but we just got to get the idea out there.
It will text you when you're out of eggs. Like,
wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge. But
game changer.
Yeah, and a little, like, it's not really a spoiler, but just kind of a minor detail. It's like, it takes place during the pandemic, and that is part of the early plot, which I thought was kind of interesting. Handled just right. I think it's in there just enough to be like, this is when this movie's taking place. And Johnson talked about how, like, he wrote this in 2020, like early 2020, when we were all in like mega lockdown.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know, it was on his mind. So it steeped into the writing. Like, that makes total sense. And it's not super intrusive to the main plot. Like, once they get to the island, it's not a factor anymore. But
yeah, it is very interesting because, like, we've talked about this before a little bit on some of the COVID stuff, because we did start this podcast, like, in the pandemic as well.
We did.
And, it's just something that's fun to do, and we love doing it. But, we've obviously watched plenty of movies and shows that have come out during the pandemic, like, and like some of these movies, I can't remember. There's another one that we talked about before. Like, I think Suicide Squad obviously was one of the bigger ones, I think, that was like made during the pandemic, I think. But like, before, I've talked about like RuPaul's Drag Race. There was a whole season filmed during the pandemic, and it's just bizarre. It is the weirdest, like, season of like reality TV I've ever watched in my life. But it has to be like the mainstay of the show. Like, you can't think about like that season without thinking about the pandemic, or like, seeing something that's about it. Like, people are wearing masks, like people are doing things over Zoom. It's very weird.
That's odd, yeah.
But then there's like you were saying, like, this movie, I think, does strike that good kind of tone where it's like, it's there, it's in the background. Some people are wearing masks, like they have to do the shots before they go on the island. But like, it also works well for the story where it's like, okay, let's just get an isolated group of people on an island, and like, there's no external force. Like, it's kind of the right story for the time period. It is kind of like weird though, like when they're wearing the masks and stuff, we're all just kind of like, I don't see people wearing masks that much anymore. Like, this kind of feels like a vestige of older times now.
Yeah, which, I mean, like, is a problem in and of itself. But and I want to talk about this quickly in spoilers once we hop over to that in a second. Sure. But it really instead of just like being during COVID and having masks and stuff, he uses the introductory scenes that are during COVID to give us some good characterization for all the characters. How they are acting in their respective environments tells us stuff about them. And that can just be our first spoiler thing that we'll touch on in a second. But yeah, you put a note in here, and you're right. It's wild that Netflix did not put this into a wide theatrical release.
Yes.
It was only in theaters for like 5 or 6 days in less than 700 theaters in the country, and it still made almost $14 million. Just colossal fumbling of the bag by Netflix, because I think I mentioned this in our last episode, but they are not profitable as a company. They need money, and I don't think new people are like subscribing to Netflix all that much anymore. I think if you're not subscribed to Netflix at this point, you're probably not going to. So you can't get subscriber growth by keeping a movie like this locked up there. You need the box office revenue. What are you doing? And they just announced they're going to end like password sharing across multiple households and make you pay more money per month to do that. And it's like, why don't you just put your movies out in theaters for a month?
Yes.
Just do that. You will make hundreds of millions of dollars.
Honestly, yeah, that would solve so many issues for them. And like, wasn't this movie like crushing it? Like,
it was doing really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the actual budget is, but like 14 million in less than 700 screens is it's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And they also had All Quiet on the Western Front release this year, which is a World War I like tragic epic. Like, put it on the bit. What are you doing, Netflix? Like, I understand the urge to like want people to watch stuff on your platform, right? But you need money. This is a way to make money. I don't get it.
Yeah, they're not just a streaming service anymore. They're production, they're
Right.
making their own content. And yeah, so it's like why wouldn't you want to get as much money as possible off of this like production? Like, people obviously want to watch it, and it's going to do well. Like,
yes,
the last one killed. So like,
yeah, the last one did really well. And there's going to be another one of these, at least one more, I think.
Good.
Because Rian Johnson signed a deal for multiple pictures. But I would definitely recommend Glass Onion, hugely.
Yes.
And I would recommend the first one as well if you haven't watched it at this point. You don't
Yeah.
have to watch them in any particular order, but whatever.
Yeah, they're both great movies. Yeah, would definitely recommend them. But yeah, there's not much we can talk about with this movie without getting into spoilers, because it is a murder mystery and we don't want to spoil to anything. I think now's a good time to transition. So if you haven't watched it,
bye.
Please exit.
Yeah. Yeah. First thing we touched on with the COVID stuff, it's just like the characterization we get from that. Like, Birdie J is having a huge party in her penthouse or wherever she lives.
Yeah,
and then when they're like, "Are you supposed to be having a party?" She's like, "Oh, they're in my pod." And like, everybody knew someone like that, where it's like, "Oh, they're all in my bubble." Like, these 50 people that all go grocery shopping on their own and stuff, like, they're in my bubble, so it's okay that we hang out together. And then when she shows up on the dock, she's wearing that mask that doesn't work because it's just like
it serves no protection at all. It's see-through. Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah. But I also love that Ethan Hawke shows up on the dock for like a minute.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
And then he shoots like a vaccine or something into their mouths, and they're just good for the rest of the movie. Which is truly, the movie is a real dig at billionaires, but this one thing is a really big dig at billionaires, because it's like Miles Braun apparently has a COVID vaccine and has elected not to share or distribute it with anyone else other than his friends. Like,
well,
the commentary has begun.
Yeah, it's very quick, but yeah, that was a very quick too, because I didn't really register that very quick. And
that scene also subtly enough introduces something that will pay off much later, and that is that Duke cannot have pineapple.
Yes, yeah,
very important plot development for later on.
It's one of those things, man. It's one of those movies you can't look away for an instant, or else you'll miss something. But yes, as Dylan described, once we get to that dock, we're introduced to all of our characters. We get to the island, and things develop from there. So just a quick summary of the plot, just so we're all kind of on the same page about where everything goes. Of course, you've seen the movie, so you probably already know, but there's a murder mystery party that Blanc solves effortlessly, which is such
he just
a great
ruins
scene.
It's so funny.
I love that. That's one of my favorite scenes.
And he's like, I had Gillian Flynn write it.
Yeah. Wait, that name is familiar, but I can't remember.
She wrote Gone Girl, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Let me make sure.
Yeah, she's just famous, but yeah, I thought that was so funny. He solved it so quickly and effortlessly. But after that happens, Duke, which is Dave Bautista's character, gets poisoned and dies, and that's because of the pineapple.
Out of Miles's drink. And
out of Miles's drink, and it's not revealed why or how he died and all that stuff.
and Blanc has introduced the idea to Miles already that there are lots of motives for people to murder him on this island, and someone might be trying to murder him. So that shifts our focus into a little bit like who is trying to kill Miles.
Exactly.
It fools you for a minute. I think it's like Miles is pretty suspicious from the get-go, but also it's like maybe not, maybe there's a little twist, we never know.
Yeah. And the second act, like just as you were describing, it dives into this subplot with Brand and Blanc scheming together to get vengeance for her twin sister. So I guess that was Andy. Right?
Andy is the one who is part of the group. Helen is the character we're following through the movie.
Right.
And right before we flash back to that, though, the person we believe to be Andy Brand is shot, and we don't see who the shooter is, but she is shot. And then, similar to the first film, we get a big revelation at the midpoint. In the first one, it was that Harlan was killed accidentally by Marta mixing up the medicine. Obviously, that is revealed to be something else later on, and that changes how we interact with the rest of that movie. In this one, we flash back and we see that it was not Andy who received the box from Miles. It was her sister, Helen, and she is recruiting Benoit Blanc to help her solve her sister's suicide, which is not another interesting thing. Both of the deaths that are being investigated in these movies are claimed to be suicide, but neither of them are. Well, I guess Harlan's actually is, but that's I didn't think about that, but yeah,
that's one thing about this movie too that's kind of weird to me, is just like how quickly I guess maybe it does take some time sometimes to find when someone has committed suicide or has died. It can take some time to find the body, but just for me, I was like, technology, I feel like it would go too quickly. People would find out way too quickly for this plot to go well. But it is an interesting thing, these revelations halfway through the film, and then they end up going undercover on the island to learn more. Throughout the
they
film,
suspect that one of the people going to the island actually killed Andy. And the reason, just since you mention it, the body was found and processed by the police and everything like that. The only reason no one else in our cast knows is that Helen did not know she needed to make a public statement that this figure has died. Right. So it's the body is found and everything like that, but it's not public knowledge just yet. And so there is that, and Blanc tells her in the scene where they're meeting on his patio that I can talk to the police and give us 5 days or something before it leaks, before it gets out. And so that's their little ticking clock element, is they have to figure it out before the news leaks.
Right, I forgot about that element of it. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I've watched it twice, so I get the benefit of the
you're the expert here on it then. But then as the plot goes on, we eventually learn that Braun, the billionaire Miles, he's actually the perpetrator of all these crimes. And in the end, Braun's new fuel that he's introducing to the world is his downfall, as it blows up his island basically and destroys the Mona Lisa, forever tarnishing his name and his company, which was such a fantastic ending to this movie.
And just the way it's a twist on his it's like a monkey's paw. He always wanted to be remembered with in the same breath it's the Mona Lisa, and he will, but not for the reason he initially had hoped. So let's just quickly go through our cast of characters, and then we'll get more back into plot and structure and stuff like that. But our billionaire, Miles Braun, played by Edward Norton, just a great skewering of the tech billionaire, Zuckerberg, Musk, Sam Bankman-Fried, all these types who are, they're all Blanc in the movie even starts out with this mindset that he's not an idiot. He wouldn't do something this stupid. And that's usually how we think of our billionaires. But you know what? They are stupid. They're pretty dumb. So
we don't need to look very far. Just look at what's happening at Twitter right now.
Yes, and that's a funny detail about that, because Miles Braun was not meant to be a takedown of Elon Musk. He was meant, Ryan Johnson said it's just like a generic tech billionaire, like tech bro guy. He was more thinking of Zuckerberg, actually.
I see that.
But this movie released, and I have notes on this down here, so let me go find that. We'll shift to the billionaire archetype because it's relevant right now. But like, it just perfect alignment of the stars, because the theatrical release of this movie happened at the exact same time Elon was reaching like peak dipshittery with his management of Twitter. So it just fit so perfectly. And it's just like, for some reason, we treat these billionaires like Zuckerberg and Musk as genius people who earned their wealth and like fought the odds. And that's never really the case. Like, if you look into their lives and history, it's like they always started rich. They're usually climbing off the backs of other people's work, sometimes that they stole, literally. And they just take money that they have and make it into more money using other people's work and taking credit for it. And even Blanc has this blind spot himself for a decent chunk of the film, and that gives him trouble cracking the case because he cannot conceive that Miles Braun is stupid enough to do the stuff he does.
Yeah.
But and that's the funny part of this fucking movie, is that the crime itself is too easy for Blanc to solve, so he doesn't solve it for a long time.
Yeah, it's like, it's so clear there. It's like, it's easy if you just like consider everyone to be a suspect. But yeah, it's very interesting. And yeah, the he's a very silly character, this Miles Braun. I just wish his name wasn't so close to mine.
Oh no.
I know.
You're right.
Miles, whatever. Happens all the time.
But I mean, it plays into Blanc's like hatred of Clue, because he's like, I'm very bad at dumb things. And
yes,
it turns out Miles's crime was a dumb thing. So Blanc, it was like just so stupid it was off his radar. Which was great. But
it's silly how he's just like you're saying with Miles Braun. It's like, these guys that we claim to be disruptors, we put them on this pedestal of like excellence. They're just like kind of the top of our society, the cream of the crop. But in reality, they're just like a con man. They're gonna like kind of push people out when it's convenient for them, and continue to just be super rich and come up with these terrible ideas. Like the what was it? It was like the dock that he made. It was like,
my god,
made out of ice or glass or something.
It's like, it's like glass, and it's a Banksy, and it doesn't go, it's set to low tide.
Yeah, so it's a piece of shit.
It's a piece of shit. And it's just like, it's in an effort to be unique and outstanding, he made something completely dysfunctional. We'll get into the glass onion itself in a little bit too, but I love that, just a little detail of Miles constantly using made up words or real words that don't fit the scenario he's using him. Like he calls Blanc the preeminent detective at one point, and there's so many, it plays in that perception we have of billionaires too, because when I was watching it for the first time, I noticed those words and I was like, what? But I assumed that maybe I just don't know this word, or I haven't used it in this context before. I'm like, that's a weird way to use that, but maybe this is correct and this character is just saying that. So I got fooled by the fucking billionaire mirage.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that's odd, but this is just a character trait. He knows these words, blah, blah, blah. But no, he's just fucking stupid. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
And
no, that's really smart, because we just kind of,
the reclamation of everything I've done up to this point. It's like, what?
It's like, you fool, you're almost there, but you're not
awesome.
quite. And just people just don't want to like call him out on it, because they're like, yeah,
exactly.
We want to be on his good side and everything. We don't want to make him look like an idiot.
and we've seen that with Elon Musk over the last couple months too, because he's, for probably the first time in years, been getting a little bit of pushback from people, and he cannot handle it. He's like, like he was, after he banned all the journalists off Twitter, they were like, they were like, you were doxing my real-time location, and that's unacceptable. And they're like, no, we weren't. None of us did that. And he just left. And then he was like, he didn't know how targeted ads work. And someone on his like staff, I think, explained. Yeah, he did not know how targeted advertising works. And he was just like, I'm just seeing these ads that are just not like relevant to me at all, and I'm not interested, and I don't know why I keep seeing them. And the guys like Elon, they advertisers like buy an audience block and they use targeting parameters, and you're just getting picked up in that for whatever reason. And he's just like, well, why is it happening? And like, dude, he called the
It's what
guy
I just explained to you.
he called the guy a jackass for that. And it's like, all of them are like this. It's Zuckerberg sunk millions and millions of dollars into this stupid metaverse that nobody wants and looks terrible, and his company is dying because of
Yeah. That is the glass onion here.
Mhm.
It's big shitty product, or it's the hydrogen. I
The
mean, the
hydrogen.
hydrogen.
Yeah.
Everyone wants that. Honestly, that would be a great idea because hydrogen is like a really, like, clean fuel, if I
Mhm.
remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while since I studied fuels or went to the National Renewable Energy Lab, which I've
Mhm.
been. So yeah, I'm not as clear on the details as I used to be, but like,
Yeah.
I think his intention is good. He wants to create this fuel that's gonna like solve the world problems, kind of like similar to Zuckerberg of like, we're
Or
gonna like,
like, I think it's more
yeah,
similar to Musk actually, because
yeah,
like
sure,
making cars that run on renewable energy is theoretically a good thing, but the way he's going about it is so ego driven and profit motivated that it's not actually a
yep,
solution to the problem. And also, cars in general are not a solution to that problem, but that's a whole other thing. Um,
yeah,
but similar to Musk launching the like Tesla autopilot thing that does not work and is like trying to run over people all the time,
hmm,
Miles Braun is like jumping the gun and trying to push this fuel out before it's been adequately tested and researched and stuff like that. And he kind of pays the price for that, which we'll talk about later. But
yeah,
um, yeah, but Benoit Blanc, another character, same
hmm,
guy as before. We're a little bit more in his head this time. We learn more about his personal life. He's either dating or married to Hugh Grant, which is fun. It
yes. Oh, that was funny. I
was a
did
fun
appreciate
cameo.
that cameo. And
Hmm.
we'll talk about those too, all the cameos. But yeah, Benoit
Yeah.
Blanc is such an interesting character, and I appreciated, like, Craig's performance is great as his character. Like, it is, we talked about this before with some actors, and
Hmm.
it's just difficult for me to like kind of envision them as other characters.
Hmm.
Like, I think, Daniel Radcliffe is kind of one of those where
Okay.
it's like
Yeah.
I will always see Harry Potter, or like,
Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. It's
a little,
probably
yeah,
one.
like I can't see you other than Luke Skywalker just because he played such like an iconic character or
Right.
something like that. And it's like kind of the same thing with James Bond to a certain extent with,
Hmm.
but not so much with Daniel Craig. Like, when I see him in this role, I'm like, I'm not seeing James Bond, and
No, not at all.
it's absolutely in his delivery. It's absolutely in how the character's written and how he can really embody it.
Hmm.
It's such a witty detective, and it comes across like that. It felt like Agatha Christie. Like every line he delivered too. I could just listen to Daniel Craig talk in that accent all day.
It's very fun. It's so
It's
fun.
it's dreamy. He's
Yeah.
he's very
And
fantastic.
yeah, and then we get Helen Brand and sometimes Andy Brand. Janelle Monáe plays two characters very well, I think. And
Yes.
yeah, she's just she is the closest thing to our like sympathetic protagonist we had in Marta in the first movie, even though I would say I think Blanc is sort of the protagonist for the first half of the movie, and Helen is the
Mhm.
protagonist in the second half. So we kind of get two distinct feels for this story, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's a structural thing that I kind of like.
I like that too, and I like in this one too. We were talking about earlier how this one, the first half, yeah, yeah, we're mainly focused on Craig's character.
Hmm.
Again, he's our introduction to the story, and so we really think that he's going to be the focal point, and that he's really just kind of along for this ride.
Hmm.
And then it shifts. That whole thing shifts with the
Yeah.
introduction of Helen into the story, and I just really appreciated how what that added to the structure and to the narrative in general. But this actress, she did such a great job too, because
Hmm.
once you think about it, she's like on in that scene, or any of those scenes where she's on the island, she's playing as a different character, pretending
Yeah.
to be a different character, which is her sister. It's like you got to think through those levels of complexity there.
Hmm.
Like, you're really like,
Yeah.
she's really trying hard, and it comes across really well, I think.
Hmm. Right. And I love the way like in when they're first on the boat, and she's like very coldly staring out at the ocean or whatever, like silently, and everybody's like, what the fuck? But then we get her perspective on that same scene later on, and she's like, I hate fucking boats. And she's just kind
Yeah.
of like trying to hold in panic and just give as much of a performance as she can. I also love when they're at the pool the first time, Jessica Henwick's character Peg, Birdie's assistant, is like uh Helen slash Andy sort of absentmindedly hands out like the kombucha to her, and Jessica Henwick's facial expression is just like the look of a child who is so overjoyed that she's been gifted this drink from someone that she looks up to. It's so funny, and then she just takes it back. I love Peg. That character is so fun. Just a completely exasperated assistant who is dealing with
Yes.
the biggest pain in the ass person, but her career is like tied at the hip to this person's success. And
Yeah,
which
she was an interesting one. I
yeah.
kind of wish we got a little bit more of
Mm-hmm.
Peg, just like because I did appreciate that, especially with Birdie J. Like, Peg and Birdie J, they're very interesting, and Birdie as a
Mm-hmm.
character is
Yeah.
great. We could talk about her in just
The
a second, but
dim-witted fashion designer, but I
yes,
love you could always use more Jessica Henwick, I think, in your movies. She's great.
yeah, I mean, she was really cool, but yeah, like I think in total, she just didn't have a lot of room to grow. She kind of
No.
felt like a very capped character.
Yeah.
So I just felt like she deserved a little bit more than what she was getting. But
She's not the focal point for sure. The
Mhm.
disruptors are definitely the focal point. But Johnson talked about in a video that he did where he's like he wanted her to always be in the shots or in the scene, sort of in the background, because she's the assistant. She is
Yeah,
always present, but always kind of forgotten about. And you do kind of get that feeling with her in throughout the movie because she is always there, but she is never the focal point, really.
yes.
But she gets some funny moments, like when she's reading the email.
Oh my
It's like
God.
it's like, just so you know, this is one of the most notorious sweatshops in Bangladesh, and she's like, you wrote sounds perf with a dabbing emoji. And then
Ah,
she's like, please tell me you didn't think sweatshops are just where they make sweatpants.
yeah. Like, I guess I
Yeah.
did. That's
Yeah,
so
and
funny.
that's so funny. And that's Birdie J, who was
Mhm.
just an insufferable person. But
She's ignorant. She's got like no redeeming qualities in her. Like
for the
it,
most part, yeah, I think
yeah,
at the end, a lot of these characters have little micro redemptions for themselves, but
sure,
not
yeah.
until that point. They're all kind of snakes in the grass until the very, very end.
I would agree. But yeah, she's so ignorant, she's dim-witted, she's very impulsive and doesn't think before she talks or responds, which we talked about with the sweatshops. And I think she
And
said something on Twitter that was really
yeah, she said
offensive.
something was Jewy.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. It was like, oh, you fool.
That's another great Peg moment too, because she's like, I had no idea it had anything to do with the Jews. I thought it was just a saying for cheap. And then Peg's like, Jewy?
Oh my God. Oh, it's so bad.
And then she goes on about how she says what everyone's thinking, or like she just calls it how she sees it. And
The
then that
disruptor.
yeah. But the in response to that, Blanc, where's that quote? In response to her and her whole ideology, Blanc just says, it's a dangerous thing mistaking speaking without thought for speaking the truth. Which is a great line, but also a great sentiment, because so many of the people we see in this era we are in who are like, I'm all about free speech, or I just say what everybody's thinking. It's like they say the dumbest, most ignorant shit you've ever heard, and people celebrate them for it. It's like, no, you're just an asshole. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like
you're
when
you're reacting very impulsively to things and saying the first thing that comes into your head. Yeah,
yeah,
like
you're just
it's
saying the first thing that comes to your head, or you're looking for an excuse to be racist and say it's
hmm
like, oh, I'm just being edgy. It's like, no, you're just being racist. It's like,
yeah. Yeah, she exemplifies that, Birdie J, and I mean a lot of these disruptors do as
Mhm.
well, but I think she's a good example of that for sure.
Yeah. And then we have Claire, played by Catherine Hahn, who is like the liberal politician, like the most liberal that
hmm
anyone's ever liberaled, you know.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
for those who don't know, when a left-wing person like me says liberal, we mean like the moderate Democrats, who on the surface are like, I support LGBT rights and I think racism is bad, but I will vote for everything that perpetuates the discrimination against those peoples.
Yeah. Those kinds of people.
Yeah, liberalism is all aesthetics based and no material change based, and that is what Claire felt like to me. Just like
Yeah.
a very Clinton-esque type of politician.
Yeah, or just like someone who's just stuck in the mud and doesn't want to change,
Mm-hmm.
who's literally like, there's a character in The Wire who's just kind of a similar thing. He's a politician,
Mm-hmm.
and throughout the seasons he progresses up, where it's like, I think the third season he starts off running for like city council, and then by the fourth season he's the mayor, and then by the fifth season, by the end, he's campaigning for governor of the state.
Yeah.
And it's like, he was all like, he had no intention of helping people. He was always interested in his own self-interest and like just trying to get to the highest amount of powers possible. And I see that with Claire here too. She's just like, she owes her success to Miles here too, because he gave her he funded a good portion of her campaign. I don't know if it was
and he still funds her too, I think. And which is another reason she's a liberal, because she's funded by billionaires. You can't be progressive and be funded by billionaires, which is why progressives have so little power.
Exactly, yeah. And then it's like, they were talking about this in the movie too, of like, she like signed off on the hydrogen thing that she was talking about it with Lionel in the pool, I think, about like, like it's gonna alienate half my voter base, but I have to do it. And it's like,
because they're all tied at the hip, or sucking on the tit, as they say multiple times. But she even says she sold her soul, so like she knows. But and Lionel is the same, because he also signed off on it from a research standpoint at some point, even though he knows it doesn't fucking work. Like they're all just like, maybe the pool is a good metaphor for this too, because they're all just like treading water, trying to keep their heads above water by maintaining their relationship with this jackass, who I found out afterward in the flashbacks where we see them as all young people, Miles's hair and outfit is inspired by Tom Cruise in Magnolia. Just a fun wardrobe detail.
Good catch there. Good catch.
I didn't catch it, but somebody did. But
it's funny.
Yeah, but we do have Lionel as well, who is the scientist who kind of takes Miles's ravings and makes them happen. And we get a taste of the dumb ideas that Miles has had before, which inexplicably have worked out for the company, like the called out child equals NFT ? Which made me laugh so hard. Found a way to make fun of NFTs too, which is great, because that is a stupid thing that happened during the pandemic years.
I forgot about that too. Like when he's just sending him the ideas like via
on a fax machine. Yeah.
Miles is like the most outdated motherfucker, but he thinks he's so ahead of his times. He sends faxes to people. He doesn't send texts. Like
there's a reason for that, actually. Rian Johnson talked about this in regards to the first Knives Out. Apparently, if you want a character in a movie to have an iPhone, Apple does not allow them to be portrayed in a bad light, basically. So like a villain of your movie, and I'm butchering the exact meaning of this, but like the villain of your movie or the murderer cannot have an iPhone. So if a bunch of characters have phones and you see like one of them doesn't have an iPhone or something, your suspicions are more drawn to that character. So making Miles not have a phone it serves the function of not giving us any indication of if he's a good guy or a bad guy.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, actually. So that's very neat.
It's very fun.
But I forgot about that whole scene where he sent those things via fax. That was very funny. Like, how do you justify this? Look at all these crazy ideas he's having. They're all terrible.
They're all terrible. Yeah. But the fax is also how Helen and Blanc start getting onto the case. You still there? Your camera's kind of freezing a little bit. Okay. But it like provides them it seems better now. It provides them extra information. But we also have Duke Cody, played by Dave Bautista, who is a YouTube live streamer, formerly a Twitch live streamer. And he's a Manosphere guy. who is at least during the pandemic living with his mom, which is pretty funny, and his
Yeah.
girlfriend. He's definitely like a there's so many creators like him where I don't think you have here that he's like an Alex Jones type. I wouldn't go that far. I don't think he's
Yeah,
like
it was. I think my thought there was more like the what was it? The Dick supplements, something like that. He had like
oh
some supplements he
yeah.
was pushing on his
Okay.
show,
That's a
and
good
like
point. Yeah.
it felt akin to some of Alex Jones. But I feel like there's so many of these guys in that
He's more like a
sphere.
fresh and fit podcast guy, which are
Yeah.
two dudes who yell about like how women are horrible and shouldn't have Instagrams because that's cheating on their boyfriend. That's a thing that
Yeah.
one of them unironically said. They're
Okay.
embarrassing individuals. Not really worth the time of day. But
Yeah.
Duke is he's an entertaining character. He has his gun on him at all times, which is another nice setup for later in the movie when his gun is suddenly not on him anymore. And I
hmm
love how he just shoots it. Like they're driving through
Yeah.
a town in Greece and he just shoots his gun.
Yeah. He's just fucking crazy. He's over the top,
Mhm.
very silly, and yeah, he feels like the kind of archetype of the Manosphere character for sure. And it's interesting, like the dynamic he has with his girlfriend Whiskey
Mhm.
as well. They're both kind of like in on this, like of the leveraging sex with Miles to get help with their own kind of social standings and
Mhm.
presence on the internet and stuff. It's very interesting to work that
Yeah.
into the story.
She became when we get the flashbacks to or the flashbacks when we revisit the first act through a different
hmm
perspective, she's the character that I think gets the most increase in like being interesting though because
Yes.
um one, we find out like she doesn't really want to leverage sex with Miles. Duke is making her do it, which is pretty fucked
Yeah.
up. He's like begging her to go do it again, and apparently he's had her do this before. Um, and she just is like a down to earth, like pretty empathetic person who seems really
Yeah.
smart, which is like she's portrayed in the first act like very male gazy, like meant to be eye candy, but then she's not really later on, which is kind of fun. Um,
hmm
but yeah, all interesting characters. Loves
Yeah,
each one
definitely.
of them.
It's like a good diverse group of people, and you got your kind of these interesting characters.
Hmm.
And it feels kind of like Clue. You get like everyone's very much like in their own niche. It's
Yep.
not like there's too much overlap between one character and the next, which is nice.
Hmm.
So it kind of reminded me of White Lotus to a certain
Okay.
extent. This cast of characters, probably because White Lotus is fresh in my mind, and I just love that stuff. It's also probably because this was in a richer location. These people felt a little bit more well off.
Hmm.
So I think there's that kind of like overlap or similarity there too. But it was also because they were just so unique. They all had these very terrible qualities about them,
Hmm.
and they're all just so diverse. But everyone's kind of got their terrible natures different from the next. Like
Yeah.
um, Claire's like taking hush money and not really doing anything for her state,
Mm.
and Lionel's
Yeah.
kind of like looking the other way when it comes to like fuels and stuff like that, and Bertie
Hmm.
Chase, totally ignorant and dim-witted and stuff like that. So um
They're all
I
just like
appreciate this cast of
victims of their own
characters.
self-interest almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Like all of them, if they like just went a little bit like acted a little bit more selflessly, could be very good and useful people, but they're all just kind of in it for themselves for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's so true, because I think there's a small difference between like this cast of characters and those on White Lotus, because like on White Lotus you can see like all these characters are well rounded, they're complex, they got
Hmm.
these various layers, and there's terrible qualities about them, but there's a lot of like sympathetic moments, periods where you're rooting for them, and where
Hmm.
they're kind of redeemed a little bit.
Yeah.
Not all of them are fully redeemed, and there's it's just like one redeemable quality, and then you move on real quick.
Hmm.
With these characters, I don't really think that there's too much redeemable about
Okay.
many of them, until like the end, when they
Yeah.
kind of like just flipped on Miles and made this kind of one statement together against him. It's like, thank God they did that, but like at
Hmm.
the end of the day, I feel like they were all kind of terrible people.
They
you
were,
know
yeah. I mean, they were all. Well, I think Helen says it best towards the end when Miles has burned the napkin and the evidence of what he's
hmm
done is gone, and she basically is like looking to them. It's like, you saw it, like, did you see this? And they're all like,
Mhm.
no. And she says, you would lie for a lie, but you won't lie for the truth. Because they don't benefit from the truth, and so they aren't willing to lie for it until the end when they turn
Mhm.
around finally, which is
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that the whole last sequence and like how the Mona Lisa bursts into flames. It's like it's just so funny.
It's so
Uh
over dramatic and in slow motion, and
mhm. And it's just it's can you imagine like burning the Mona Lisa? Oh my god, your name would be tarnished
tarnished
and
forever.
yeah,
Which
and it's such a satisfying payoff for this movie.
it is a satisfying payoff, and it the part before that, leading up to it, and that itself, it's like almost a little bit of a reality check, because it is the trope in detective stories where, like, when like Sherlock or Benoit Blanc or Hercule Poirot like lays out the case for you, it's like the plot usually resolves around that time, right?
Mhm.
But Miles uh, correctly states that, like, in the real world you need evidence, and I just destroyed yours. So what are you gonna do? And Blanc's like, he's right. I have to answer
Yeah.
to the system. So it's a little bit of a reality check. And then the only way she can get back at Miles is to destroy his legacy. So she just uses his arrogance at putting this stupid fuel to power everything,
Mhm.
and then make sure to burn a like international treasured piece of art
Yeah.
with that fuel. Like, it's because, like, you're right.
Brutal.
There's no coming back from that. Your new
Mhm.
technology destroyed the Mona Lisa. You're fucked.
Yeah, your product, your name, everything, you're fucked. Yeah, you
Mhm.
destroyed the most significant piece of artwork in the past, like millennia. You fucked up.
Yeah.
Like,
And then after that, all the people are willing to say, like, oh, yeah, I did see him leaving Andy's house that night. That was kind of weird.
hmm
Like, so,
it's
but
very strange.
let's talk about the glass onion, though. The metaphor that is
Yes.
glass
Yeah.
onion.
And I think that there's a lot of ways that you can approach the glass onion too, because I did like a little bit of research on this, and
Mhm.
like there's an old Beatles song called Glass Onion, and
Mhm.
the Beatles wrote that song because
I think it plays in the
they
credits.
yeah, I think it does, and I think if I remember correctly, the reason why they wrote that song is because there were fans that were trying to dive too deep into the lyrics and try and piece out
Mm.
meaning. They were like, "This song has no fucking meaning. This is a glass onion."
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then I think there's also like something I learned too, that like glass onion was like British slang for like a monocle as well, which is kind of
Huh.
interesting to learn. But there's a bunch of articles that you can read on it, because at the at the root of this film is the glass onion, and it's two things in this film. It's the location, the
Mhm.
bar where they came up with the idea for Alpha, I think it's
Alpha.
called.
Yeah. Where
Alpha
out
together.
where Andy came up with the idea for Alpha. That's
Yes, where
important.
Andy came up with it, and then yeah, things got complicated from there.
Mhm.
But so that's one way to look at it, and then there's the other way of the actual physical glass onion structure on the
Mhm.
property on his Greek island.
Yes.
And it's an interesting like metaphor to include and make it the title of this film, because obviously uh, a glass onion is kind of a contradiction. With an
Mhm.
onion, you're peeling back the layers. With a glass onion, you can see right through. There's transparency, so there's no need to peel back the layers. It's kind of like
Yeah.
on the
Mhm.
nose. And it's kind of the same thing with the mystery in this movie too. I think it's a little transparent, yet it's multi-layered.
Mhm.
And we were talking about it before earlier. Benoit is uh, uh, totally stumped by this mystery. He's not looking at the obvious, because
Right.
he's not looking at
Because it's just
Miles as
too
a
dumb.
suspect. Yeah, he's like, this is too dumb of a crime for this to occur. I can figure this out, but I'm thinking about it too hard.
Mhm.
It's very easy once he kind of puts it all together.
Yeah.
Um,
I love when he puts it together and he's like, it's so dumb. And then
yes,
Birdie J is like, it's so dumb, it's brilliant. It's like, no, it's just dumb. It's
it's
such a
just dumb. And I love that moment too, where he's like, and I gave you the
yeah.
idea.
The only like competent part of it was something he stole from
Yeah, it was like, oh, you go shoot her,
put a
turn
gun
off
on the
the
table
lights.
and turn off the lights.
Like,
It's
oh my
so great.
gosh, you took that from me. It's like it's very interesting.
One
And,
one other thing about the glass onion, actually, that I just thought
mhm,
about is it's like Miles with the construction of the glass onion on the island is trying to reconstruct something that's no longer there. Like this group of friends met organically and genuinely liked and cared about each other at the Glass Onion bar years ago. Um, all of anything organic about those friendships is long gone, and Miles has artificially reconstructed a literal glass onion that lacks all of the comfort and the charm of the original. And it's just like it's projecting this image of something that hasn't existed for a long time, and that is their friendships, because none of them are friends anymore. Lionel and Claire kind of are still friends, but like nobody seems to like Duke. Everybody seems annoyed by Birdie J. Everybody is clearly just using Miles and he them. So it's just they were friends at one point, and then it's all gone now. So.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to read it. I love that. And it's interesting too, because, you know, I think as an audience, when you come into a whodunit or a murder mystery like this, you're very much expecting a complex plot, or you're going to have a hard time figuring out who the killer is. And I feel like you have this expectation that the murderer or the criminal at the end of the mystery is going to be one of the smarter folks of the group, the smarter people that's going to be very like thinking through all the pieces, so that way they can find a way around the expert detective and get away scot-free. But Miles is a fucking idiot. Like
he's a fucking idiot, and like he tries to misdirect and stuff like that. Like when he gives Duke his glass, and then he is the one who calls out that it's his glass. Like that is his way of trying to redirect Blanc to oh my god, someone's trying to kill me. But it's so sloppily done that
Benoit's able to put it together. But yeah, the mystery of the metaphor of the glass onion is it's interesting, and I think there's a lot that we could continue to talk about it, but I don't know, I think it's pretty transparent and straightforward.
Yeah, it really is. But
for us, at least,
yeah, let's talk about the celebrity cameos a bit. There were several. You have some thoughts on them, I think.
Yeah, it's just it's not even like a really big deal, because I liked some of these celebrity cameos. They were fun. Like Hugh Grant as the roommate was kind of funny, and then when he's playing Among
boyfriend,
Us,
they're a couple.
Boyfriend.
Yeah.
They're okay. Yes, they're a couple. Thank you. But then he's also playing Among Us with Natasha Lyonne and some other people. And then you get some other things like Stephen Sondheim and Ethan Hawke is there, and Serena Williams shows up.
Serena Williams cameo was fucking hilarious.
That was very funny.
What a reveal too. She's just sitting there idly, and it's like, I'm on the clock. Like, do you guys want to do anything? Like,
you're spending that kind of money to get a workout session with Serena Williams. Like,
well, and not just a workout session, just like have her idle on the clock until you maybe want to work out. Just like commenting on the like ridiculous excess of billionaires' lifestyles. Oh, we forgot about Daryl. Is that the guy's name? The guy who's just there the whole time?
I think so. Yeah, Daryl.
So fucking funny. He's just like constantly in the background walking around. Helen runs into him and he's like, well, you want to hang out? And then at the end, when everything's blowing up, Blanc and him are just smoking on the beach, and he's like, yeah, fucking A.
He's just chilling with Blanc. It's like, yeah, that guy was all right. I love
He has no context for what's going on. He's like, this is fucking sick. This house is blowing up. That's wild.
He's just the stoner roommate there for a couple weeks. I love him.
Yeah.
But there's like other ones, like I think, Jeremy Renner's Hot Sauce or something like that.
And
the movie.
And fucking Michael Morbius, what's his name? Jared Leto.
Oh yeah,
Jared Leto's name is mentioned. His hard kombucha.
The kombucha. It's like, okay, great. And then I think Yo-Yo Ma got a cameo too, and it's just like, they're fun and they're weird. They just sometimes they're like kind of pull you out of the story a little bit, and you're like, why did they include that? Why is he on a Zoom call with Natasha? Why does he know Natasha Lyonne?
I get it. It didn't bother me really, but
and it's not a really big thing. It's like if there's like a small complaint, it's just like, why are we having all these small nods to the audience when it's every other minute? Like,
I probably really insulted Jared Leto by remembering him first and foremost as Michael fucking Morbius. Oh well, apparently he's not the greatest guy, so it's fine.
He wanted to do that movie. because he did it. So
He did it.
so he's got to stand by that.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about plot structure a little bit. We've circled around it a little while,
Okay, yeah.
but just in similar fashion, Knives Out, we get a big revelation at the midpoint, and it changes our whole perspective on the story. Marta being the maybe accidental killer of Harlan, and the reveal that we have actually been watching Helen Brand and not Cassandra Brand in this one. After Andy is shot, we flash back to reveal that the girl we saw at the beginning who smashes the box is not actually Andy, it's Helen, her sister. And then we basically go through the events of the first act from a different perspective. And it almost, like, you know, in movies like this, like when you rewatch it, you always pick up on new things and you're like, oh shit, that, like, it was right in plain sight the whole time. This act kind of does that without rewatching the movie, because we're going through the same events and we're just getting additional information. Like I talked about already with Whiskey, like we get a lot more depth for her character. She has aspirations for a career in politics. And she's like pretty bright and is like, yeah, I read your court transcript. You got shanked. That was kind of fucked up. These people aren't really that cool. I don't like that my boyfriend is doing this manosphere bullshit, all that stuff. Like, that was really fun. I also just love how we get the reveal that Blanc's like apparent bumbling in the first act is all just like intentional to disarm people and stuff like that. But it also toys with our emotions, because the last time we saw Helen, she had been shot and falls down. And then we see her on the ground bloody, and Blanc has like a tear in his eye. So it, like, the more we get to know Helen in Act 2, the more sad we get that she has just died. And then it gives us a nice little emotional release when we cut back to the present and she is actually alive, and they just like use the hot sauce as a means of killing people, which
it was very funny.
Yeah, just another little setup and payoff too. The hot sauce. Like,
yeah, right. Well, yeah, he's so good with the structure of these films, like with getting those setups down, excuse me, and then moving along, running with it. Yeah, I really enjoyed the structure here too. Yeah, it's very similar to the original, but it's got its own unique pacing and structure.
Flavor too.
Yeah, it's got its own unique flavor, but yeah, I appreciate how the direction changes, like not midway through, but like pretty far into the film. Like you're already a full act in at least.
Yeah, I'm rewatching it last night. It's like pretty much right at the hour mark is when we get the reveal that it's Helen, and we go back to relive the events.
Yeah, so. And it kind of gives it a different tone too. Like the first, act is very much focused on like, kind of this discovery and mystery and like what's going on. And then the next act feels more like a thriller, like a spy film of them going undercover and trying to figure out all this stuff. Like, it's kind of like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of like Barbarian to a certain degree, of like how
the tonal shift.
Tonal shift really quick. Like, and all of a sudden we're getting this new story and it's going to somehow loop into the original
that's a good point. I didn't think about it that way, but
I mean, completely different story, completely different.
And it's also contrasting with the first film, because the second act of Knives Out is almost Marta versus Blanc. She is trying to figure out how to out navigate him and not get caught, whereas the second act of this one is Helen and Blanc team up to find the real killer. So it's just another like nice, similar in the very skeletal portion of the story, but like all the details are different. Like it uses a similar framework to do something totally different, which I love.
Yes, we love that here.
Just great. Yeah. But also lots of really creative shots and blocking throughout. Johnson did one of those variety videos where he like breaks down the directing of a scene, and he did it for the doc scene. Really great watch for anyone who likes learning about filmmaking and shot composition and blocking and stuff like that. He really talks about how like just all the decisions that go into making a scene like that, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out because I am interested in that stuff too, for sure. But yeah, it was very interesting through like I think this movie really kind of speaks for itself. Like a lot of murder mysteries, like when you watch it, you're just going to be blown away, and it's not going to like, it didn't feel like too predictable either. You know, like
No.
I didn't predict who died. I didn't predict that, and like, you know, the way the narrative moved,
Hmm.
it felt very organic
Yeah.
and yeah, unpredictable, which is what I love in these kinds of
Yeah.
stories.
People like to mock Ryan Johnson for the subverting expectations stuff, but two things. One, in the quote that these people are referencing, he says the intent isn't just to subvert your expectations; it's to tell the best story
Hmm.
possible and blah blah blah, which is very funny that all the people who hate him just misquote him all the time. Uh,
Yeah.
and but also, yeah, why do you not want your expectations subverted a little bit here and there?
Yeah.
Like that is what makes movies like this so satisfying, is like just the whiskey character alone. Like that is a subversion of our expectations. We are set up to believe a certain set of things about her. The first thing she does in the movie is get on camera and say, "I love my boobs. Sorry, feminists," and then walk away. And then the second act of the movie reveals that that's not really who she is. She has a lot of stuff going on. That's good
Hmm.
writing, guys. Come
Yeah.
on.
I'm fine
Um,
with that. And I would much rather watch this movie than the Oriental Express, you know, like that
yeah,
I think Hercule Poirot
Hercule
uh
Poirot. Yeah, I mean that's a
Poirot.
direct adaptation of an Agatha Christie book.
Yeah,
This
and
is
that
inspired by Agatha Christie, and it's yeah,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
and
I mean
there's
this
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like narratively and like structurally, like this is far more interesting, and I don't want to just see the same story over and over again. Like
Hmm.
whether or not he subverts my expectations or not, like as long as I'm getting a very original story, which I did here with
Yeah.
Glass Onion, I'm gonna be satisfied and happy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in like the Murder on the Orient Express, when did that come out? Book, the book, like the book.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah, the book came out in 1934. Like the
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that story. It's great and it was a foundational piece in this genre, of course.
Hmm.
But
Yes.
the I think you correctly contrast with the movie adaptation of that, because that is a direct adaptation of a 100-year-old story. This is a evolution of the genre
Hmm.
that takes inspiration from those stories but adds twists and new things on them, and that's what you want to see from a genre that has existed that long. It's like you don't want the same thing
Yes.
over and over again. You want fresh new takes on it and new things, which is what Ryan Johnson is great at doing. And I think he did that with Star Wars too. He
Hmm.
took and I've talked about The Last Jedi way too much in my life, but he takes the familiar concepts and tropes that we're all familiar with and adds a spin on them, adds a twist. And if you don't do that, then why are you making more stories about that?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but uh Glass Onion, great movie, super fun time.
Yes.
It's on Netflix now. Sadly not in theaters anymore, but you can watch it whenever you want to, like I did
Yeah.
last night. So,
Definitely recommend. It's such a good one.
yeah. Any
Um,
final thoughts, or you all good?
no, let's move on to the final portion of our episodes. We
All
always like to
right.
close out um, these little podcasts for Play Pause Rewind with just like recapping of other stuff that we're doing,
Yep.
media we're consuming, games we're playing, books we're reading, all that good stuff. Um, that way you can explore and find new things to check out. So
Yes.
Dylan, what have you been doing lately?
So I'm reading the third book in this Mistborn arc, The Bands of Mourning. It's good. I like it so far. And then also I saw Avatar: The Way of Water, which will be our next episode, I believe. I think that movie is great. And I think visual effects obviously stunning, just like the first one. But I think in terms of narrative and story, this exceeds the first one. There's a lot
Hmm.
more going on. And I just think it hits really well. I also saw Babylon,
Oh,
the
nice.
new Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie movie. I liked it a lot. It is a historic level financial bomb, though, which is
Oh shoot,
not
that
great. Yeah,
sucks.
it
It looks
so
cool.
it's about yeah, it is, and it's about like I mean Babylon, the city that like fell. But it's about the silent era of film and how the
Oh,
excess of that era sort of comes crumbling down with the transition to sound. It was like um at one point the movie does bring up Singing in the Rain, but I was thinking about Singing in the Rain a lot when I was watching it, especially after that point. I'm like, oh, it's like Singing in the Rain from a different perspective, where the silent stars are like getting all fucked over because they can't do this type of acting, and it's but
Mm-hmm.
oh my god, there's like a 20+ minute sequence on a silent movie set in it, and it is some of the most chaotic energy I've ever fucking seen. It's awesome. Um,
Let's
it's
check that
just
out.
it's just like shit is going crazy. Everything's breaking. It all feels like it's on the verge of collapse at any moment. Everybody's getting really drunk. People are
Mm-hmm.
dying. It's insane.
Cool.
But it needed like 95 million or $1 billion to like break even or something, and it's made like 6.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just not the year for, or just not the time for movies named after cities. I don't know. I heard because Amsterdam, I remember, didn't do very well either,
Oh,
and
well,
that came out very
Amsterdam.
recently.
Yeah, I mean, Amsterdam is also made by a guy who like assaulted his
Yes.
so a little bit different. This is made by the
Yeah.
guy who made La La Land and
Mm,
Whiplash.
okay.
Um, but like it's really bothered me because there have been people like celebrating this movie's failure at the box office, and
Hmm.
it of like and it's like people on like film Twitter people who get mad about the prevalence of the MCU and all these big franchises taking over everything. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Don't celebrate
Mm-hmm.
when a movie like this that is maybe an irresponsible use of budget and maybe plays into like the like self-congratulatory nature of like movies about Hollywood, but like you can't complain about Marvel and then cheer for this failing. Like you are
Mm-hmm.
cheering for cinema to just be big franchises if you were cheering for it failing. But I also watched The Fablemans, the new Steven Spielberg movie about his
Oh,
childhood and his parents. Really good. I liked it. Good movie.
interesting.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
What
Maybe I'll check that out.
what about you? What have you seen?
So, been watching a little bit more of The Legend of Korra.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if
What
I brought that up before. Just started
yeah,
season 2.
nice.
Um, so the first season really liked. Second season I'm not loving so far.
Season
Uh,
2 is considered the worst season of the show by pretty much
I
everyone.
can tell already as I'm
It's
getting
not
into it.
it's not the best. I don't
Yeah,
hate it, but it's the weakest of that show by a long shot.
yeah, it's like 2 episodes in, and it's I'm already having problems with the pacing and how quick things are moving, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm still gonna watch it. Not gonna be as enjoyable as the other ones, but I still
Seasons
like
three,
it.
seasons 3 and 4 are really good. Just power through season 2. You'll
Yeah,
get
I know. I
there.
just got to get through it. And I know I'm still gonna have fun along the way because I love that world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we have actually took a bit of a trip through. We're back in time lately, watching a few throwbacks here as well.
Okay.
So we watched 9 to 5, the old, I think it was 1980, Dolly Parton.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm blanking on the other actresses' names, but it's very fun
Okay.
movie from that era and very progressive as well, which I was surprised by. But it's like basically the premise is like these women that are working like 9 to 5 job for this
Mm-hmm.
boss who really sucks, steals
Yeah.
their ideas, takes credit for their work and stuff, and it's just kind of like a plot of like, okay, what if we killed our boss or
Oh,
like
that's
took him
fun.
hostage, kind of thing? Yeah, it took a very interesting turn, but yeah, it was very. I loved it. I would recommend it.
It's a very
Um,
specific interpretation of seizing the means of production.
I know, yeah. Yeah, go Dolly, take down the man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious too. So definitely check that out if you haven't. It's classic camp, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
I also we rewatched Miss Congeniality
Okay.
recently as well because it's been on our list for a while, and I was like, okay, kind of holds up. Some of the jokes not as much, but it's early 2000s film, and
Mm.
when we were watching it, once we finished it, we were like, oh, I had no idea there was a sequel. How do you do the sequel to this? And we looked it up, and it was like, oh yeah, even Sandra Bullock admitted like there should never have been a sequel to this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, we always talk about how humor ages like milk. I would say specifically early 2000s humor has aged pretty horribly compared to.
Oh, it's not great. And I mean, it's just like there's some strong messaging in there of like, female empowerment and
Mm-hmm.
people coming together, looking out for each other. And it is, there's some good moments in the film, but yeah, it's just kind of
Yeah.
like at moments it's like, is that a joke that's kind of like a little homophobic, or what was that? That was kind of
Yeah.
weird.
Well, we rewatched Love Actually over the holidays, and like
Oh
we
yeah.
talked about some of the like problematic shit in that movie last episode. But it's like I did not remember. That movie hates fat people so much. It's so
Mm,
mean about people being fat. Like
yeah,
it's
there's some bad
wild.
parts for sure.
Yeah. But
Less well remembered, but yeah, I was good walk down memory lane. And speaking of walk down memory lane, Dylan, did you ever play a game called the Oregon Trail?
yeah, I did in my second grade classroom on the class computer. Have you been playing Oregon Trail on your Switch?
Yes. Yeah, they remade it.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's it's not as challenging, I would say, as the original Oregon Trail, but like if you do the really difficult
Uh-huh.
difficulty, it's fucking impossible. It's so
Yeah, well,
hard.
I mean, the original Oregon Trail was bullshit.
Oh, yeah, some parts are still bullshit. It's like, oh, the wagon wheel fell off and just like broke your one of your teammates' legs, and now a
Yeah.
bear is mauling you.
Yeah, and it's like your recovery from the bear attack is going well. Oh no, you have died of dysentery. It's like fuck, man.
Exactly. Yeah, it's such bullshit sometimes, but like it is kind of fun. It was like I saw like an ad for it, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
they're bringing that back, really? And then I thought about it for a few days, and I'm like, I'll buy that. I'll check that out.
That's awesome. How much is it?
It's like $30 or something
Okay.
like that. So it's like it's not terrible, but it's I've played it. I've played through it like once or twice now, like
Mhm.
through the end of the trail, and it is fun.
Yeah.
It's not the most engaging gameplay,
Well,
though.
I mean, no, it never was.
It's not great gameplay, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of
Yeah.
like I never played, what was that, Animal Crossing,
Hmm.
but I think it's kind of, if you enjoyed that game, I think you'd enjoy the Oregon Trail.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for our episode this week. We will be back 2 weeks from now. We'll do Avatar: The Way of Water.
Avatar.
Not sure next. We'll have to check releases, but Last of Us show starting in like a week or so.
Ooh,
So that'll be
cool.
a good, not, I was gonna say fun. It's not gonna be a fun watch, but it'll be a good watch. But until our next episode, Niles, where can people find you on the internet?
Follow me on Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, where can people follow you?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and on Twitch at D-Day_movies. Thank you all so much for watching and or listening. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode and enjoyed Glass Onion. Until then, or until next time, have a good one. Bye.
Bye.